There's so many places that are fantastic, but there's so many restrictions around sound and those sorts of things and licensing laws that actually makes it really difficult for a promoter or an owner to actually turn it into what they want to turn it into.
Yeah.
So
No incentive.
there isn't, like, and I feel like with the extra 1,000 of people that are going to turn up in Gosford over the next sort of year because of these high rises, you've got to invest in the infrastructure inside there. You've got to have these little venues. You've got to allow people to say, oh, you know what, I want to make a little music venue in the CBD in Gosford, and to, you know, get rid of some of that red tape.
Yeah, venues are almost punished for wanting to put on live music financially.
Yeah.
And they go, well, it's just not worth it. Thank you. You've been sitting here waiting patiently for us.
Eamonn, but it's spelled Eamonn, so yeah. It's a bit of
Eamonn Snow and Cameron Smith.
That's it.
Yeah.
I looked up your names. I thought that was the best yin and yang names ever. It's like
Is it?
Cameron
Eamon
Smith.
Cameron.
I suppose syllables, it's like, one syllable last name, 2 syllables, there's an M and an N ending the first one. I've never even thought of that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it's always just been Cam and Eamon, and that was how it rolled. But
Cameron Eamon.
Maybe we should start using our full names. We'll have more cut through. I don't know. But we're here not to talk about us. We do
we enjoy it, but we'll...
It feels like everyone's got to have a gimmick these days. You've just found your gimmick.
Yeah, you found it.
Cameron Smith and Eamonn Snow, did you notice the syllables?
Yeah.
You know? And everyone's like,
We're a
wow.
palindrome of each other.
That's right. Yeah, because I like when it's all the commercial radio hosts are always like, this nickname and this name. You know, it's like the formula. It's
Fitzy and Whizzer or something like that. Like,
Well, it was
that's
Rocco
they
and
do that all the
Tracy.
time, yeah.
Julian Rabbit. And then
it's usually a nickname
Jess
and then a
and
normal
Ducko.
name, right?
Yeah.
Like Debbie and like Fish Breath or something like that. Like, it's like normal name, stupid name.
Yeah.
And then that's the perfect to say. One of you's got to adopt a mad nickname, unfortunately.
Yeah, and one he has to be a bit silly and then one he is a bit more normal. But yeah, I don't know where we land in
I'm
that.
going to go Cameron normal. Snow.
Snowy. It's like
Silly. Snowy.
No, that's up to you guys to choose. It's not us.
We'll have a production meeting midway
you
through
guys-
this conversation.
Is this going to end up in the podcast? What we're talking about?
Yeah,
Probably, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, more than likely.
All right. That way we get credit for it when they figure it out.
That's why. Savvy businessman over here.
But how do we arrange your two names in the best way possible? We've got David and Sidney from Drawing Arrows with us right now. Davey and Sido, welcome to Homebrewed.
Sidos.
Sidos and Davo.
We're on the Central Coast.
Yeah. So
Coast, right?
so we have to
Sidos.
have a name that sounds like a nickname, but it is just a syllable put on the end of our own name, like Davo.
Yeah, Davo's a obvious one.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like Sid, just as a...
Everyone calls me Sid.
Yeah.
I'm a Sid. I'm a Sid.
So we were wondering, Cam and I were actually pondering before. We have had a social media interest in one another for a while, but was the genesis of that a Damien Gerard? Is it Damien Gerard with how we became aware of one another?
Yeah.
That's the question. Damien Gerard Studios in West Gosford is what we're referring
so we've
to.
done a lot of recording there. Marshall's a great guy, and he runs a Foghorn Media, which is like a label who distribute through MGM through there as well. And actually the first time I spoke to Marshall, we'd already had a load of stuff recorded at 301 in Sydney, and we were looking for someone to look after it for us. And
Locally.
and he listened to it and he said, yeah, that seems to have fit with the kind of stuff we'd put out. So we actually got our stuff released through Foghorn before we did ever step foot in Dave and Sidney Studios. But that's I think that's how we know each other. Yeah.
Right, yeah, and Marshall, fantastic bloke. Yeah. Damien Gerard, very great recording space as well. And before, which probably isn't included in this, you guys were mentioning that you have been recording together, at least some of you, for 10 years or so. But the music goes as far back as about 2021 in terms of what is released and available to us via the streaming platforms right now. So for those who aren't aware of you, tell us your story of Drawing Arrows. How did you come together?
Dave hit me up. I was in another band, ended sort of 2007, and then I had a bit of a break.
Yeah.
And I did vocals for one of Dave's projects. It was more of a DJ.
Yeah, because I used to produce drum and bass and dubstep when I was in London, and I came over to Australia, kind of left a lot of that behind and didn't think I'd go anywhere near it, but the bug held on. And I was like, I'm going to start playing around with stuff. And it's one thing to produce instrumental stuff, but you always want to kind of collaborate with someone, and you always want to find a singer, or you want to find somebody who plays a different instrument to kind of elevate your work. And a mutual friend of ours put us in contact with each other, and you did 2 or 3 tracks under Milo Firewater.
3 tracks
which
on
was
your
our
album.
Yeah, dubstep name. I'll have to dig them out, actually.
I had to listen to them not long ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
Does it hold up, or is it the kind of thing that you turn off halfway through?
No, I think it holds up. I'm loving them.
Okay. Yeah,
If they didn't hold up, I probably would have rejected them back then.
If we can get a snippet of that, I don't know how accessible or easy it is to find.
Oh, it's all on Spotify.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, then that might find its way into this episode.
Yeah, you can rip it off of there. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I'll probably get more like plays if you do that than if you actually leave it on Spotify. Like, so just
There was a track, Last Night Storm. That was a great track.
yeah.
That was fun. So we met that way. And then he was mentioning before 2015, they hit me up more for a party sort of thing. So he was playing with some friends in a band, and they hit me up again.
I think my sister was coming over, and I was like, I really want to put a party together.
Yeah, that was it.
And I said, Sid, like, we're just going to do maybe 7 or 8 covers, and Sid was like, no, I don't do covers.
I don't do covers.
And I said to you, look,
not because I don't do covers, I just suck at them.
Nice to
It's like,
I said, Sid, in my negotiation way, I said, look, if you do this for me, I promise we're going to do, original stuff after this. I'll write some stuff, and we'll put a band together. And you just assumed that I was lying.
yeah.
But I followed through, didn't I?
You did, and I enjoyed the covers. So it really helped, because that fear of doing covers and doing a representation of them went away after the party. It was a great party, and we loved it. It was getting on stage again for me as well with a band, feeling the bass and the drums and everything. It was like, there it is. That's what it was, that magic. And so the fear of the covers went away, and it all went on from there, basically. And all the originals started coming. It was great.
And we never performed any cover in the way that it is supposed to anyway. We always end up remixing things, and Sid always puts his own flair on it. It never sounds like the singer. So we always try and make them feel more original anyway, even if we do cover another person's song. But that's when we started thinking, okay, let's actually write some 3, 4 or 5 piece band like rock music, which is kind of our roots, really.
Yeah, so that party that you threw for your sister was almost like the genesis of Drawing Arrows. That was
At that point we were Velvet. And
Never released anything.
That was only because there was an entire wall in the basement where we were practicing that was covered in velvet just to mute the sound, and brown velvet.
Brown
What
velvet.
we call brown velvet.
It's even worse.
Brown velvet. It was like, ugh. Anyway,
certainly puts an image in the head, doesn't it? As opposed to a
sure
nice
does.
green velvet or a purple velvet.
but no one has brown velvet.
No.
Quite unique.
It's not necessarily an image you want to keep in your head, but it was an image nonetheless.
Yeah.
And then so that was the genesis. I think you're right. That was the genesis of Drawing Arrows.
So you have your sister to thank.
Yeah, I have my sister to thank for a lot of things.
She's here right now. She's back.
Yeah. It's like the 17th time. I wish I was exaggerating. 17th time she's been here. Might as well give her a passport. If the Australian government is listening, you might as well give her a passport now.
So she clearly likes the place, which is good.
Yeah.
And as do you, David, if you've moved out from London at some stage in your life. I was very interested also to read about influences which range from punk to rock to flamenco. You've got electronic backgrounds as well. There are other ones listed in the formation of the band, which was 4, but is now 5 as recently as last night.
Yes.
We understand.
Yes.
How do all those influences come together into what you're producing now?
Well, they come together individually because we all bring them. I bring I'm Spanish, and I bring the flamenco, the love of the flamenco thing, so that sort of wailing voice to my vocal, not in the same manner, but similar, and the influences are a bit different. And then Dave, you brought more the alternative rock sort of.
Yeah.
The other boys brought the punk.
Yeah, I grew up in Colchester in England, and that's Blur's hometown. The guy from Blur's in a couple of years above me, and I'd seen him at school play, and I'd seen bands like Cast and Ash and Pulp and very English sounding bands that grow up in that kind of Brit-pop era. So a lot of and that's when I was learning to play guitar, so a lot of the techniques that I was learning was just coming from that space. And then what then happened in England is that there was this rise of dance music in that sort of late 90s era, and the Norman Cooks kind of somehow made dance cool and indie again. So, and the Chemical Brothers, and lots of people were drawn from the indie rock scene into the dance scene. And then I just started producing music because I was getting into that. Then got heavily into like proper drum and bass, and producing drum and bass. But in the back of my mind, I was still strumming away the power chords to Nirvana somehow. So
yeah, that's an interesting point that I don't like. Obviously, your musical influences, what you listen to, is influenced in what you create. But I don't think the way that you learn guitar for the first time is from those influences, and obviously that's going to translate as well. I remember when I was learning to play guitar, it was, Blink-182, The Offspring, all of that. So a lot of power chords and bar chords. And then when you move into, I don't know, you get older and you're like, okay, maybe let's revisit some Beatles or something. And it's completely different, style of playing the guitar as well, which then influences what you're creating too. It's not just listening and then going, oh, I like that sound, let's do that. It's also, this is how I've learnt to play. And I imagine it'd be similar for piano or vocals as well, whether there's a vocalist who you're trying to replicate when you're starting out.
Always.
And then you're like, hey, well, that, that's my range, so I guess that's what I'm creating.
Yeah, well, for me personally, you hit a nail on the head there, because I was, I grew up listening to, say, Bruce Springsteen, U2, Simple Minds, Pearl Jam, all that back in that day. And going back to Bruce Springsteen and U2, the older albums, and so... And the Doors, and really loved Jim Morrison, Michael Hutchence. So I had this vast vocal range that I loved. It took me a while to figure out, but who am I? Because it was like I'd sing a bit like Jim Morrison, then I'd sing a bit like Michael Hutchence, or sort of. And it's like finally hit. I can't even remember what year it was, because I'm a fair bit older now, but there was a point where I started figuring it out. I knew my range. You said it, right? So you knew where you could go. Mm. And I started going quite high and doing certain things. So I had the grunt and the aggression of certain bands that I loved, Rage Against the Machine and all that, but then I could just falsetto it and do whatever I wanted. Great. That was me, and I started developing that. Then Jeff Buckley comes out. Comes out of nowhere and is like, I saw him one day, we were watching that show. It was that... you get home from work, and sort of that 3 p.m. show. It was an animal show. You'd know the soundtrack to it. Can you think of it? Show. It had a really weird like. Da, 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 da.
I really hope all of this is staying in the podcast.
It was really weird. It was so weird. Anyway. They had a special guest. And
if I find the audio, I'll put it in.
Yeah, and I hope it was that show. I hope it wasn't another show. But
if I can't
the
find
things
it,
that would show
crazy.
up. Yeah. And anyway, their special guest was Jeff Buckley, and he was touring. And I'd never heard of Jeff Buckley. And he was touring the album.
You could say you knew Buckley's about Buckley.
What's that?
No, Buckley.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Excellent, perfect. So I knew Buckley's about Buckley. So true. And I'm watching this guy, and, there's a new guy, and I'm watching it. And then he starts singing. They present the song. And I just went, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing. He's kind of like almost beat me to it. But I loved it because I hadn't heard anyone else sort of do that stuff. And that's where I found out, well, that was me. I'm kind of, but it was different because I'm sort of throwing a lot of grunt and other things in it. But it was like, now I know who I am as a vocalist, and I found my way. So that's what I've done ever since.
Mm. And it reflects really nicely into your music because there's like quite a bit of range in what you've got released in terms of heavier elements, lighter elements, and then like your vocals hitting pitches that span a lot of the influences that you do kind of list, which are like your Radiohead, your Powderfingers, Queens of the Stone Age, etc., and this really nice fusion of maybe more melodic rock, more emotive rock, I suppose, if that's a right way to characterize.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, light and shade.
It
dynamics
comes through really, really nice. So, is that a musical philosophy that you've set out with when you started producing music as Drawing Arrows, or is it the natural conclusion of your melding of influences?
That's a good question. I mean, do you remember the conversation we had at a pub when we were going to start creating stuff? And I came from another band which was a lot of light and dark sort of contrast, lots of dynamics, big riffs and stuff. And then we were always trying to write personal things without really wanting to impress the crowd in a way. It wasn't like, this is where I came from. It was like it was writing what we felt in the room, but it wasn't really sort of saying, we want to make them do this. All we wanted them to do was just listen to what we wrote. But then we had a conversation and it was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with that. Why don't we write music that someone actually wants to move to, and the emotion and the story's still there, the truth is there, but we want to get them moving and jumping. So there's a lot of the rock element in there that does that, but then trying to mash that up with the emotive and is the hard thing, and that is the philosophy that I think we tried to do.
Yeah, I remember the conversation. It was along the lines of that music actually has to have a reason.
Yeah.
It's unlike art.
It wasn't for us anymore.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah.
Although it is in a strange way.
I feel like the definition of art is it should exist for no other reason than being art. And unfortunately, that just makes it pretentious when it comes to music. and now that music is is more of a commodity than it is a piece of artwork, you've really got to feel like a music has a purpose. Like, this is dance music. I'm supposed to dance to this. This is chill out music. I'm supposed to chill out to this. Like hip hop, I'm just supposed to feel cool. Like whatever it is, it's got to have a reason to exist. And unfortunately, music that exists for music's sake, people just come away going, yeah, I'm not feeling this. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know why this exists. Unless there's a core niche audience that love that kind of stuff, but they are few and far between.
It's funny because I was reflecting on this yesterday, as we spoke about the Triple J Hottest 100 and how a lot of the music that's popular across the world isn't necessarily reflective in the Triple J audience. And, when you're 30 is when studies show that you sort of stop caring, well, not caring, but you stop sort of adapting your music tastes at 30, that you sort of locked and loaded and this is what I enjoy and I'm going to continue listening to that. And I feel like I'm 30 this year, so I feel like I'm at that point. But then I was also reflecting, like Dizzy Rascal's Bonkers came on randomly, and I was like, man, I love this song in high school.
Some people think I'm bonkers, but I just think I'm free. And I'm just living my life, there's nothing crazy about me.
Bonkers.
When I was like, if it came out today, I would think it's rubbish. And there are similar songs that come out today that I do not connect with, but the younger, high school kids do. And I think it's that, I don't know whether it's an emotional connection or it's just part of like your cultural relevance at the time. But in high school, kids were listening to that and it had a reaction to those kids, and that flowed on down the line. So when I was at high school, I was like, yeah, I'm, a high school kid and I'm dancing to Bonkers by Dizzy Rascal. Yeah. Where now, if that song came on, I'd be like, what is this? Like, I just don't have that connection to, like, it's a different connection I have to music now than I did as a kid. And maybe that's why, music that younger kids listen to, I think, no, that's rubbish. But it's just, their connection to it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you mentioned is making sure that it has a reason for being, but also that it has a story and it has substance, which is not so much something that kids worry about these days. You know, it's all about, you know, bonkers, you know, whatever it might be. But I feel like
we could do bonkers.
we could do that, but we don't want to. Do we? No.
No, we need another pub chat.
All of we need another pub chat. All of our songs have very interesting stories behind them. There's not one song that's just, oh, this is just fodder. This is just an album track. Every single story has a specific reason for being. And that's why I think we love all of our stuff, because we've fallen in love with the story. And it's not just a really cool riff or anything like that. This is a story about the most amazing air jacking that ever happened in US history, and how it must have felt to be an air hostess on that when it happened. That's what that song is about. And everyone goes...
But it wouldn't be self-explanatory either, and that's another philosophy. We'll try and let the listener take on their own interpretation of it.
Yeah, because
that's something we think about when we're writing.
Yeah, that's a big thing. It's like it may be about a specific thing, but we love to kind of write the poetry around how it must have felt to be in that situation, and that way it's transferable. You know, I'll write a song about a planet or something like that, and somebody will come up to me and go, you know, I felt like that about my boyfriend once. He was like, what are you talking about? That's not what that song's about. But because I've not been specific about what it's like to have two bodies move together in space, I've just written about what the feeling must be like, then people can transfer that onto whatever life event has happened to them. So that's the methodology. Find the conflict, find the thing that happened, try and figure out what the emotion must be like there, and then write about that. That's our kind of
Do you
philosophy.
could you compare it to, I don't know, an actor getting into a character role and you're trying to find out more about the story than what you're revealing? So you need to understand the song and the story more than just whatever's on the paper or whatever's, you know, conveyed on the track at the end. Like if someone spoke to you about, you know, those two planets colliding, you can have a better understanding out, you know, a deeper, meaningful understanding outside of what you share.
Yeah, that's a good way to compare, I guess. The trope is an actor saying, well, what's my motivation here? It's like, no, all I need you to do is sit in that chair. And it's like, no, I need to know the background. You know, am I angry? Am I happy? Whatever it might be. And that like I said, that emotion can be transferred, but it still needs to be known. So, yeah, it's a good comparison.
Yeah, because I know authors as well will do like character interviews. So they will write questions and respond to that in an interview style, but it's as the character. And it helps them understand the character a bit more and their motivations as well.
It's also an emerging, maybe like psychological technique that I've heard about in order to understand yourself better, is to interview yourself about how you feel. So these things are very interesting. And you've got a balance in that description there between what is very personal and the art that you're creating, but also then creating that for people to resonate with and not just having it so personal that it's inaccessible. So is that the perfect way that you found to balance it, is to capture stories, prisms, ideas, and then present them in that way? Because that feels like a nice blend of those things that you described.
I'll give you an example. Yesterday, there's a song of ours called Siren.
Seems like blood, but not with love. Was that a kiss or a subtle goodbye? It seems like blood, I'm having my doubts. Was that a kiss or just spit in my mouth?
Is about mermaids. And you know how they're the real villains and pirates are considered the villains, but you know, sirens were, according to the whole philosophy, is they would kill the pirates. They'd fall in love with them and
Drown them.
and they were murderers.
Yeah. So it was the pirates that feared mermaids, not the other way around, like Disney would have us believe. You know, like it's that they were the terrifying things of the sea.
So long story short, the song's about that. And I've dedicated this song to a friend of mine who loves fishing, and he spends most of his life out on the ocean. right? And last night I was driving to the venue. If I'm going to when I'm on stage, I'm going to dedicate this song to our friend Ziggy, who's in hospital at the moment. And it took on this completely different meaning, even for me. It's like I was listening to the words and oh my goodness, this is going to go down like telling a totally different story. I'm being a bit, don't want to share too much about Ziggy, but, it tells this completely different story. And I thought to myself, 20 years from now, if I'm sitting in a podcast with, Smith and Snow, they're going to go, what was that song about? And I'm probably going to go, oh, yeah, that song was written about my friend Ziggy. He got cancer and he's in hospital, and I probably forgot the real original meaning myself. So that's kind of how it changes what it all means for someone. And that's kind of, it was a great example of how we want to write songs for people to take them themselves. I did it to our own song. So...
Yeah,
and it really changed it. It was incredible. Even a friend in the audience said, "Hey, you dedicated that song to..." I go, "Yeah. Can you tell me the lyrics? You've heard that song heaps of times." He goes, "Yeah, but did you write it for..." She changed the whole thing. It's like, no, the song was written 3-5 years ago. Yeah. So anyway, that's kind of what happens. We did it to ourselves.
Yeah, and fascinating how the meaning can change
totally
from the artist's perspective as well.
Yeah.
The meaning isn't fixed. Obviously it has its origin, but the meaning isn't fixed for even the person who writes and produces that music as well.
The classic example is Trent Reznor writing an amazing song and Johnny Cash re-recording it and doing it in such a way that it now actually sounds about Johnny Cash's life. And Trent Reznor has quite famously said, that song's not mine anymore. It belongs to Johnny Cash because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like an old man who's full of regret and all of his friends have passed away, and that wasn't me, and that's not what the song was about, but it's turned into that song. Yeah. That's a classic example of it.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were on the way last night to a show that you played, and we've got you the day after you've played a show.
That's why we're a bit hoarse of the throat. Yeah, that's why we're croaky a bit this morning.
At the Everglades in Woy Woy. So you were playing in support of Sat and Cully. Tell us about that show. How'd it go?
They're great guys, and they did such a great job. Like, they were really, really professional.
Great songs.
Yeah.
Really good songs. And I don't know if we already said this. We were talking about it before, but it was a big room and we had a good crowd, but the room was a bit too big for both of our bands, basically. It was for the amount of people. So, I mean, it is a Sunday night.
Yeah. There was another band in there called the Cat Snatchers as well. They were fantastic. If you ever get a chance to see them, they're like this sort of like 80s kind of
70s
sitcom kind of like, but rocking at the same time.
Walking on air, that kind of stuff. It was awesome.
It's like
Keys.
I'm expecting Hill Street Blues to come on any second. It was that kind of cool. But it was one of those weird environments. Like if you've ever been to the Everglades in Woy Woy, it's actually it's a golf course, and then it's RSL. So you got the pokies there, and you got a bingo hall, and you've got some 80-year-old woman tucking into a schnitzel, and it just feels like an odd place to go and see a rock band. There's a big space out the back that's being renovated at the moment, but the room that we were in was, as Sid said, quite big. Even if you put 500-600 people in there, there'd be still room. So it's one of those places that you think, well, yeah, if we're going to do a small show, I'd probably like a smaller venue, so you can get that kind of sort of up close personal environment. And we always got them, like if we'd had that show in the Lincoln Pin, it would have been epic.
Amazing.
But sometimes it's about perspective.
Oh, 100%. Like we've spoken on the podcast many times, and personally too, like we both follow soccer, football, probably you know it more as being English. But the argument of boutique stadiums here in Australia, look at, I don't know if you follow the A-League, but Brisbane Roar play at Suncorp Stadium, which is a 50,000-60,000 seat stadium. They get 10,000 people there. It looks empty. The atmosphere looks dull. If they were at a more boutique venue like Perry Park, which needs an upgrade, but which might only have a 15,000 capacity, but you put those same 10,000 people there, the atmosphere feels better, it looks better on TV because it's a full crowd. And the same for live music. You have a massive venue, but that same crowd in a smaller venue, it'd feel better. You'd have a better energy performing and also being in the crowd as well.
Yeah, so true.
So we have, you mentioned Lincoln Pin, and there's probably a handful of venues similar to that. We've also got Drifters for the top level here on the Central Coast. But yeah, we sort of, that lower to mid range seems to be lacking here on the coast.
Yeah, I'm sure it will develop at some point. I mean, there's so much happening between Tuggerah and Gosford and Woy Woy and all that area. There's so much development going on. But with all the high rises, you hope the rest of the infrastructure comes in. You hope all these great venues and a variety of different venues. The ability for a promoter to say, okay, we know we can possibly sell 600-700 tickets, but if you only can sell 200 tickets, it's all right. We'll move them to this venue and it'll be great and it'll work in there. But we don't have that smorgasbord of venues that are available to us in somewhere like Melbourne or Sydney, where you can make the switch to a more compatible room. I mean, the opposite is true. Like you might sell out a venue that's only got 200. You might have sold too many tickets. That's great. Let's move it to somewhere bigger, and it will work in there. And it'll happen at some point, but that point is not now.
We've been saying that for 7 years, so I'm hoping that point soon.
It's heading in that direction, but it is an interesting discussion, and we've spoken a lot to artists as well who do play in that they feel the conflicting nature of maybe playing in a venue that isn't a music venue, that might also have poker machines and the footy playing over there and the bistro over there, and how that feels as an artist. But at the same time, it's fantastic. Like we were saying off mic, I've noted that the Everglades in the last 12 months or so have started bringing in touring acts and providing another space for live music. So that's great.
Yeah.
It's just then we have these kind of growing pains or teething problems where the venue availability on the coast or the interest from the Central Coast public, and we're preaching to the choir here, but the best way to support it is to go and buy tickets to these shows, doesn't quite match. And yeah, I feel like maybe what's happened on the coast is we've ended up with a lot of venues with larger capacities, but there's like the Lincoln Pin and maybe a few others that satisfy that really smaller, more intimate space. And we probably need now a bit more of those
I agree.
to support the industry.
On a consistent level too, like Lincoln Pin are consistently having gigs there. So if you want to see live music and you're on the peninsula, you know where you're going. But, if, a cafe or a other, leagues club, whatever, does live music, but they'll do it for 2 weeks and then they won't again for 2 months. You can't build up that sort of culture for music at the venue. It's you need more.
They have to book that nostalgic act that's big, and it's going to bring. Or for the young ones you were mentioning, the young ones when you were younger, you'd love that song and so on. So we were talking about who is going out to live music, the big shows, and we've got young friends and they'll come up and they'll mention an artist. Oh, I went out to watch this person last night, for instance. And, they'll show us some videos and it's packed. And I haven't even heard of this artist. How did you? So we're missing something, obviously. We're not on there.
That might be an age thing, man.
It's definitely the age thing. That's what I mean. But they've gone out. They've gone out of their way. They've put in the energy to go to this show that I've never heard of. But then not many people turn up at, Everglades, Woy Woy, and is that because we're older and we're going to stay home more, and only if something we know from the part, like something nostalgic comes up, we'll all go, we'll pack it. But then, what's that energy? And it's the youth energy. It must be that.
Yeah, and part of it maybe as well is it's one thing for us, and this has been a process we've watched happen over the last 7 years we've been doing this, but we've gone from having effectively nowhere or very few places for live music to happen, and then losing some and gaining some. But now it's happening, but the culture has to take time to build as well, and the habit forming of people, that's what they do with their time on the weekend, and even demographics as well, as we were speaking to with Jack previously. The demographics of the coast are changing, but that's going to take time too, because it was known for some time as a retirement village by the sea and things like that too. So all of those things have to combine and to make it work. But it's good that we have the gigs in the first place, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think
the bands are there. We've got plenty of bands.
The bands are there. I think the venues are here as well. We just maybe need a little more of maybe local
guys that want to do it with passion, like your Lincoln Pin guys, and want to stick to it.
But there's a legislation
you guys doing
part of it as well.
Podcast, sticking to it.
I think if if the local government wanted to push it, then it would happen. And to ease particular, there's so many places that are fantastic, but there's so many restrictions around sound and those sorts of things and licensing laws that actually makes it really difficult for a promoter or an owner to actually turn it into what they want to turn it into.
Yeah.
So
No incentive.
there isn't. No, and I feel like with the extra 1,000 of people that are going to turn up in Gosford over the next sort of year because of these high rises, you've got to infuse. You've got to invest in the infrastructure inside there. You've got to have these little venues. You've got to allow people to say, oh, you know what, I want to make a little music venue in the CBD in Gosford, and to, you know, get rid of some of that red tape that unfortunately is there.
Yeah, venues are almost punished for wanting to put on live music financially.
Yeah.
And they go, well, it's just not worth it. But if you had incentives from governments to sort of increase that, and then, hey, you know, we'll cover the costs of your license or whatever the case is, it would certainly help. Because there'd be people who would be wanting to do it, but they just go, it's too hard or it's too expensive. It's just not worth it. I can't remember the venue name. It's probably changed since, but it was in the Gosford CBD. They were applied for a license to do live music, and they were told effectively no, but, you know, maybe you can do, and you might have mentioned it before, like DJing is allowed in some areas, but not live bands in music, like the type of licensing because of the noise restrictions and whatever. Like that also feels like that's an issue that needs to be resolved too, because, you know, nothing against DJs and, you know, going out clubbing and whatever, but, you know, the culture is formed from live music and seeing musicians performing live. Even if it is, you know, a DJ act that you're seeing, it's different to clubbing per se.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think there are a few rays of light. I mean, Drifters do put some amazing shows on, and that even though they're allowed, you know, that they're in a residential area and that they have a cut-off time that's acceptable to the area, so it works. You just got to find the compromise.
And also to old fuddy-duddies like us who they're not on till 10:30. Oh my god!
How to do stuff tomorrow.
It's too late.
We should start a club night.
should do
called
our
In
own.
Bed by 10.
Sid and Dave's.
Sid and Dave's In Bed by 10.
Didn't Dave
Snow
do
and
everybody?
Smith and Snow. Have you played Smith and Snow yet? That sounds cool.
Look, we've got grand plans of violin, saxophone, bass, but anyway, that's another story. We do have
This sounds interesting.
Cam can play music, I can't, so it requires learning in the first place.
I can play. Okay, long story short is I can play guitar. I saw people playing the violin, and I was like, I could probably make it sound okay.
Same sort of
like,
thing.
yeah. And then everyone's like, "You're a fucking idiot." Like, no chance. Like we had Joel Leggett in here, and his mum plays violin, and he plays guitar. And I was like, "Have you had a go?" He goes, "Yeah, it's really hard."
It is hard. I've tried to play the violin.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. I was like, in my mind, the skills would translate, but obviously not. And
I think we've all
for the
done that.
longest
We've all
time.
picked one up and gone, come on, how hard can this?
Yeah, a couple of strings and a bow.
You know, it's even bringing them together. So I play bass, but I was thinking, oh, you know what? I could play double bass. It's like it's the same sort. It's not.
No.
It's absolutely
movements
not.
are
It's like
so-
this is completely, obviously fretless, but at the same time, it's a different technique. And it's like, so even when the lines are closer like that, it's still tricky to try and like translate one musical structure onto another.
I think that was one of the big things Joel was mentioning. It just feels bizarre having it under your chin, and like the movement of it just feels strange. And Eamon for the longest time has wanted to learn piano, so we said maybe we'll film something where I'm learning violin and he's doing piano. But
Smith and Snow taking the world by storm.
I'm going to your first gig. That's for sure. You need to let us know when that's happening.
you'll be the one and only in the crowd. So thank you.
But we do have you right now. You mentioned that. Well, you mentioned before. No one else has heard this. That you have music that has been mastered, created, tracks that are to be released at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah.
And the last music we had from you guys officially was back in 2022.
Yeah.
So tell us about what has been created so far and how much you can tease about what that's leading to as well.
Well, you know, we'll give you the stuff afterwards. You're welcome to pull snippets of it, but we've got 12 new songs that we've been playing with for quite a while. Since we released we chose 3 to release, but these other ones were still almost finished, and now we're getting to the point where Hayden's studio is nearly done, isn't it, Hayden? Because it got flooded, and he's basically stripped it all out. Hayden's the drummer. Stripped it all out and rebuilt it, and we can't wait for it to get back in there so we can actually get it all recorded. But it's been a weird thing to happen, actually, because initially we're like, well, we've lost our recording space, but actually it's enabled us to perform the songs live and step back from them and let them. Because I don't know if you write music, what it's like to write a song. It's your song for a bit, and then you share it with your mates, and Sid sings it slightly differently. Oh no, that's better. And Hayden goes, I prefer to do a triplet here, and Tom goes, I'm going to play an A minor 7 instead of an A here, and it starts to mutate. And at one point, you realise your hand is completely off the wheel, and it's writing itself. And we've had time to allow that to happen to these songs.
Yep.
I feel like if we'd just gone and recorded them before, they wouldn't be as mature as they're going to be when we record them next.
Which is how bands always did it, right? It's bands in the studio for the next album. They're creating. It's the creative space. Album's released, and then they tour it, and the song morphs into something as they go on tour around the world and whatever. We don't have that luxury. So it's kind of like we get used to them live. And it changed again, even last night, some of my sort of vocal lines and notes, because now Jack's there and he's backing up a little bit, gives me this freedom. So I was sort of sitting there while I was singing some of them, and I'm so glad we haven't recorded this yet, because I'm going to change that now.
Yeah.
I'm going to do something different. And it's better anyway in the end. So
you have to draw a line under at some point, because otherwise,
well, it's when it's recorded. It's done.
Otherwise, you never get anything recorded. But
yeah, we haven't had the liberty to get it down. So we've had this time to play gigs with these songs and get really familiar with them.
Yeah,
which makes the recording
feedback.
process easier too.
Yeah,
because then we just go in. It's like, that's what you're doing. That's what we're doing. Easy.
Having said that, we have got 3 mixed and mastered. We've got one called Bonfire, another one called Hunter, and another one called Watch the Switch. And we've held back releasing them right now. I mean, I kind of get a tiny bit disenfranchised with how Spotify is when it comes to releasing stuff these days, because I feel like I just throw stuff up into the graveyard along with the other 10,000 songs that got released today on it, and let's just hope that someone hears it. So, like, yeah, okay, we can do that, or maybe we could make a bit of vinyl of it, and like, I'm not sure who's going to buy that, and we kind of been weighing up what we should do.
We're around all these ideas. What do we do?
But I think
12 songs.
We realised that we should definitely record them all before we do anything, rather than just take these 3 and just stick them out, because there may be something else involved. And
so our next goal is recording from now on, basically, all of them. Then we've got the liberty to, say they're all recorded, they're all mastered. We choose, do we release them individually, which gives us then time to maybe play with video, do some clips for them. Like we've done the recording, they're all there, but then we're freed up to really explore the video side of things and do that. But yeah, decisions we've got to make yet. And the recording is the next thing.
The form you're describing is an album, right? At the end of it, and that will include the 3 songs released in 2022 as well.
No.
Okay, these are 12 brand new songs.
12 brand new songs in the form of an
I was
album.
going to ask, because then if they've already been recorded and mastered, and then you've got these new ones you're about to record, those 3 would probably sound quite different, because they haven't had the maturity, as you said, to sort of live in the world and get audience feedback and
100%.
Evolve in that way.
But I do feel like if you're not careful, like a musician is never happy.
No.
Like, if you're not careful, you're going to go, should we go back and should we re-record Bonfire again? Well, we could, or we could put our effort into the other songs.
Yeah.
And you have to, at some point, just draw a line under something and go, no, I need to move on now. I've got so many other... I currently have at least 50 beginnings of songs that's sitting on my hard drive just crying out, Dave, can you finish me, please? And then there's so much potential there. Like, why fester on one thing when you could move on and because we're doing it because we love it. Like, if you're not careful, you're going to fall out of love with something if you keep pushing it too hard.
And we do hear that so often from artists who are just never satisfied, and then after they release music, they'll be like, "Oh, I don't even like it," or whatever else. But the format of actually taking it to audiences, playing it, and then having the band having it kind of evolve with the band and how they want to perform it sounds like actually a very good way to get it as rounded as you could possibly, knowing that you're probably still never going to be satisfied entirely with elements, at least. And then from the audience perspective, they're often like, "This is amazing. This is fantastic. I don't know what you're talking about." So, very
you're always your own worst critic. But that's how most of our songs have been written. That they start off in one person's camp. You get to about 60% done, and then you take it to the wider audience and say, like, "Okay, this is what I've done." And the guitarist decides, "No, what we need is this to be not sound like a country song, Dave. This needs to sound a bit more interesting." I was like, "Okay, all right, let's go down that route." And Sid will come up with a completely different melody line from what I've written. And he goes, "I like your lyrics, Dave, but I don't like that melody line." I was like, "All right, okay, let's go with that instead."
And the audience response helps. Like Hayden loves watching the audience, and he's always got feedback about, I'm busy in the performance mode, and he's just watching and like, "Yeah, so when you did that, they did that, and you did that, they did that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, thanks, man."
You're doing the analytics for behind the scenes. Yeah.
So that happens too, and that helps create the song a little bit as well.
And it sounds like a lot of, if not all of production and recording is done in-house. So recorded at Hayden's studio in his home, or he has a...
Yeah, he's got a basement. I mean, having said that, Watch the Switch was recorded entirely at Dave and Sidney Studios.
Yep.
She's gone. What's the switch inside? What's the switch?
We felt like that one song, even though it might end up feeling a little bit different to the others, it deserves it.
Yep.
It's a very heavy song. It's a very emotive song. We got a friend of ours, Taylor, to do some backing vocals in there as well, so it's got a big round sound. So we felt like, okay, let's do this all in their studios. But I feel like with the amount of effort that Hayden's putting into this basement, it's going to be
good.
It's going to be good.
And we've done vocals. We've taken different things that might need a bit more specialty recording and wisdom behind it. So vocals we've done at Damien, and we've done all the guitars, and Hayden's done the drums at his place and all that sort of thing. So we did that with 301 as well. We did the first EP. All We're at 301.
And we recorded all of the guitar and the drums in-house.
Yeah.
And you obviously have your production background with drum and bass music and whatnot, so you would be quite handy, I would imagine, with producing music. Does it differ, though, obviously, the techniques or obviously the different, effects and the way that you, adjust the vocals or the distortedness of a guitar or a drum would be different for drum and bass to what you're producing now, but a lot of the techniques would carry across.
Well, he's learnt a lot by doing the vocals in, say, 301 and Damien Gerard. He's been on deck and picked up a lot
on the way. But
I almost trust him now to just do the vocals.
You trust me?
I trust you.
I guess the parallel that maybe you're looking for in production of that style of music over a 5-piece band, the rules are still there. Like, we want to hear a call and response. We want to be able to hear the syncopation of bass and kick drum. We want to hear the right compression on a standing wave against the kick drum or the side chaining. There's techniques that you learn in electronic music that still relate. And actually, one of a good mate of mine, who Tim, he actually listened to our stuff, Tim Powell's. And he said, you can tell that there's an electronic dance music producer behind this, because just the way everything's positioned sonically. And until he said it, I didn't even think it was a thing. And he said, no, you can tell that you come from that area. The way that the stuff drops out and then comes back in again. And he's like, that's a dance music thing you just did there, right in the middle of a band playing.
So you're almost telling your own story with that music too.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know if we could pick it apart that much, but it feels like maybe it's a bit of a history.
It's revealing in a sense as well. So we've got this music that's ready to rumble, snippets of which you may have heard already on this. Do we have release plans or gig plans, or all of that is yet to be determined as you record and
I think
songs mature?
The song, the gig we played last night, we came away from it and said, I think what we need to do is just hit pause on playing live for a bit and go back into the studio and record, and that's going to be our focus for a bit. And I actually think some new music's going to come out of that as well. We've got enough
Definitely
80% finished songs that need to go somewhere new, and then I think maybe middle of this year we'll start thinking about performing again, and we'll start performing those songs again, the ones that haven't really seen the light of day yet. And we've got a new band member, so it kind of changes things up again. We started as a 5-piece. We started with 2 guitarists. So the first EP that you were talking about, that's 2 guitarists in there, Dave and Wade, and they went their separate ways, and we brought on Tom. So I almost had to kind of like reprogram some of our songs and go, how's this going to work with one guitar now? But it worked, that worked fine. But now that Jack's come back on board, I think, great, I've got this ability to be able to jump between the Gibson on that particular stack back to an Ibanez on that stack and have that kind of sonic difference, which I didn't have before with one guitar. So I'm now going to have to rethink how we do some songs again.
Yeah, but it's shown to be very fruitful already anyway.
Oh yeah, it's
it changes everything.
Much better sound when you've got 2 guitarists on stage.
It sounds like that's what was you were always most comfortable with 2 guitars.
Yeah.
So, and that is as of last night, as I mentioned before, and you guys mentioned to
congratulations,
off
Jack.
mic. Welcome, Jack.
Welcome, Jack.
So we have all of that to look forward to. We will keep an eye out. Where can people find you in the meantime if they want to follow your journey and catch all that?
Yeah. There's I think we're most active on Instagram. But yeah, we use all of them, and
they're all linked.
Yeah, and the drawingarrows.com has got links to all of them as well.
Beautiful. Well, it shouldn't be hard to find you. Dave, Sid, thank you very much for coming in and chatting. It's been great to learn about the band, and we look forward to hearing what's in the pipeline.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Oi, you. This podcast was produced by Cameron Smith. It was recorded at Sonora Studios. For more from us, go to www.homebrewed.au. Goodbye.
Davo and the Sid.
I wanted to say that, and I was like, I couldn't think of it quick enough as to what that was going to be.
I think just Davo and the Sid.
And the Sid, yeah.
We know him as the Sid.
Yeah.
You could be El Cid. There's plenty of those guys.
With the Spanish background.
Davo El Cid.
Yeah, Davo and El Cid.
El Cid.